So we are talking about financial technology and your path, your entrepreneurial path. You're in the mortgage space. Maybe to kick off, I was looking at your Trust Pilot reviews, and they are remarkable. Over 10,000, and I think they're perfect scores for Habito. How does one achieve that? Clearly, you've built an amazing product. So maybe give us an overview of Habito and what makes it so special.
Yeah, and just to correct you a little bit on the trust pilot, they're not all perfect. There are definitely some blemishes on there, like you'd expect for all businesses. But yeah, we're very proud of over 10,000 trust pilot reviews, which are we're 4.9 out of 5. So very, very proud of that. But so yeah, going back to your question, a bit of background about the business, and maybe a bit of background about myself and how I pivoted into it, because I wasn't the founder of the business, but the founder found business in 2016, really like many during that period of time when technology was starting to make his input in many industries. Financial services was one of the ones that was untouched because of its complexity. And the founder, Dan Egerty, had gone to a mortgage broker to get financing for himself and just found the process pretty horrible and thought, there's got to be a way of making this more straightforward. And so Habito was born in 2016, and like many VC-backed businesses, raised a lot of money at a time where it was very exciting, and it's still very exciting to be part of the fintech ecosystem. It did exceptionally well, built a really strong brand, really started to scale. Some great technology. Recruited the best-in-class people. But again, like many VC companies, turning into a profit was the challenge. It put product and customer at the forefront of everything. But that requires money and investment. And when that money and investment dries up, there are challenges that inherently come with that. And, Liz Truss came along a few years back and made some difficult decisions within the economy. Liz Truss being, our kind of government that took the lead of the country. And, things became pretty tough and the funding dried up. The business was hemorrhaging at a time between £500,000 to £1 million a month. I knew the business from afar. I founded a previous business, a bit more of a traditional mortgage brokerage, but in the financial services space. My background's ex-investment banking. I worked at Deutsche Bank, UBS, Goldman Sachs. I set up similar to Dan, really, because I was a mortgage I was a landlord looking to get a mortgage from my mortgage broker. I was telling them what to do, when to do, and how to do it. I thought, Brian, that's the best mortgage broker can offer me. I set up a business myself, and I grew it and scaled it, sold it to what was at the time a FTSE 250 business, and I exited. And it was at a time when I exited that Habito was going through a challenging time. So I saw the opportunity. I reached out to Dan, the founder, and he said, so we're in a difficult space at the moment. Would I be keen to come on as CEO? And I reflected and I thought, actually, if I could be a founder CEO, I would come on board. And therefore, I need to get enough shareholding of the business to make me feel like that founder, which I duly did. I'm also the largest shareholder at Habito as well. So we continued that journey. My objective was to turn the business around. And I did that. And we're now in a position where, we're regularly break even and profitable, 7 or 8 months out of the last 12. And, we're on a really strong trajectory. So, Habito is a platform. It's a digital mortgage brokerage, but it also has various other bolt-ons, which make the home ownership journey far more easier to say, I want to buy a property, to getting the keys. And that's ultimately the objective.
I'm curious about when you were evaluating whether or not to join Habito, like the thought process around a turnaround, going into a turnaround situation versus a company that's stable or, at least moderately growing. What gave you the confidence that you could turn around the company?
Well, firstly, how do you feel? Extremely scared. It's a lot of money, of your own money, hard-earned money you're putting in a business that is losing money. Many thought I was crazy. I had a previous exit. I'm relatively well-known and an established figure in our industry in the UK. And people thought, not only am I risking a significant amount of money. I'm risking the reputation that I built so well over many years. But I think I'm in a unique position. I'm an entrepreneur who's already started, scaled, and sold a business. I'm ex-investment banking. I understand the markets. I understand how to deal with VCs and private equity firms. But at the same time, I understand the industry. Built a business myself from ground up in more traditional methods. So I felt I was very well placed to do the turnaround time. And what I saw in the business is what maybe other people didn't, because I was looking at the basic economics. The productivity of our advisors is 3 or 4 times better than a traditional advisor. We do 40 to 45 mortgages per advisor per month. The traditional broker may only do 10 or 15. We had an enormous amount of organic lead flow. And that's because of our retention of our customers, because of the exceptional service we give, but also because of the heavy investment of my predecessors into the brand. So people knew who the Habito brand was and came to us. And I couldn't get my head around, well, I could, but we had such big organic traffic. We had such profitability. Why is the business hemorrhaging so much money? And some of it comes down to basic business commercial acumen. And that was one of my strengths, having bootstrapped a business from ground up, from 0 to 200 staff over many years. And so I felt very confident that I knew the levers I needed to pull to get that business turned around. And I went in with open eyes, premises, initially there was quite a lot of C-suite executives on quite big salaries, and that wasn't sustainable given how the business has contracted. But also commercial contracts were negotiated maybe not as well as it could have been, and we were paying much higher than we should have been. And I knew how to benchmark that because I'd already grown a business in a similar vertical, or in the same vertical, I should say. I'm saying, well, why are we paying this when we should be paying this? I know the comparison. And I could see that across 10, 20, 30, 40 contracts. And, so you can start the forecast very quickly. If I negotiate that to the price it should be, if we move into a hybrid away from my expensive London premises, you can. It's not so much of a gamble because they're all known quantities. You just need to execute it correctly to make it happen. And it's less driven on, what if I drive 20% more business, because that becomes a bit of more of an unknown. You have to invest. And so whereas these are factual things where I knew I could get from A to B. And therefore it was a lesser risk for me. But I think that comes with inherently understanding the market I operate in.
How much did culture factor into your strategy in going into the business and turning it around?
I love that question, because culture is something massively ingrained in my DNA. The business that I built previously and founded, culture was at the heart of everything we could do. And we couldn't necessarily pay, having bootstrapped the business, we couldn't pay the highest salaries, we couldn't, attract necessarily the most educated and best talent because we couldn't afford to. So we had to build a culture that people wanted to come and work for us. And by putting the customer, everything at the forefront of what we were doing, we created a really strong culture. And culture doesn't mean having donuts on a Friday and going home early on a Wednesday and that type of thing. It means giving people autonomy, giving people trust, transparency, and the ability to feel like they're part of a journey. And that is what we were exceptionally good at previously, and it's ingrained in my DNA. So when I went over to Habito, luckily the culture was already there. But doing the adjustments I needed to do the turnaround, there was obviously a big risk that culture could be damaged really, really quite heavily. But I'm very grateful and thankful that our retention is amazing. Our attrition is extremely low. So whilst increasing revenue, wiping out losses, increasing headcount, and turning the business around, we lost very few staff. And I think a lot of that is down to the culture, the vision, the transparency, and making people feel that they're belonging and part of that, and they're part of a bigger picture to make that purpose and that journey easier for customers in terms of getting mortgages and the home buying and the home ownership process.
Are there certain kind of philosophies that you keep in mind almost like on a daily basis? Like how intentional are you with when you're interacting with your teams?
One of my most popular kind of words that I would say is well done. Thank you. Really simple words, but leaders don't use it enough. You need to congratulate your team when they've done well. Your words from the CEO saying well done may take you best part of 1 second, but will make the day for somebody. Thanking people and showing gratitude makes a massive impact on people, when they've done something for you and you've taken the time out to do that, because you're in a fortunate position, and I never take that for granted. That is definitely one, to show gratitude and be thankful and be appreciative of the people you work with, and to show that. Second thing is, if you say you're going to do something, do it. I think that builds trust, giving people transparency, that even in bad times, they understand it's bad. They may not agree with some of the decisions you're making, but they understand why you're making them. And that's super important. And then another philosophy is making sure you surround yourself with the strongest people. I think if you want to scale a business, I think they say you're the average of the 5 people closest to you. And that's so true, because if you think you can do it yourself, you can't. And you need people, you need to empower them, give them the autonomy. And if you do that, then you're able to do the execution work, the bigger picture strategy thinking, and that allows you to build a business at scale.
You recently had a great summer. You did some travel. Maybe tell us a little bit about this nice break you took with the family.
Yeah, well, look, I'll start a little bit earlier. When I founded my business and I exited after 15 years, I sacrificed a lot. Like anyone who's doing business will know, the long hours, and the not taking holiday. And even when you do take a holiday, are you really there, present, or are you minds elsewhere? So I promised myself when I exited the business I founded back in 2021 that I would make more time over the summers, and I've done that. Last summer actually I was in the States, and I was out for 6 weeks. Kind of went over to New York to Chicago, flew over Chicago to Seattle, and then drove down the West Coast, down to kind of LA, up across to Vegas. So had a great holiday there. Previous year, I went to Southeast Asia, 6 different countries. So yeah, really tried to enjoy the summer. And then this summer, I celebrated my 50th birthday in Ireland, and on a couple of separate holidays to Dubai, along the fjords in Norway on a cruise ship. Was the first time. My parents used to talk about that all the time. Great cruise ships, but you eat a lot, but it's great. And kind of felt I was always too young, but maybe I'm coming to an age where maybe I enjoy that a little bit more now, and the kids loved it. And then I also went to Thailand because it was my second son's 18th birthday. So yeah, and I know that sounds very privileged and very lucky, but equally, I come from quite humble beginnings. I worked extremely hard to get where I am, to be able to afford that balance, which maybe I didn't have before. And for context, for those listeners, who want to understand my story a little bit more, my dad came over to the UK in 1958 from Malaysia. He was the eldest of 11 children, and had £20 in his pocket, and hitchhiked. It took him 4 months to hitchhike, from Malaysia to the UK in the late 50s. And he went through trials and tribulations, died a number of times, and he worked hard when he arrived here. And he worked, even up to his late 40s and 50s. He had 2 jobs, working, cleaning toilets in the evening, day job during the daytime, office job and things. And seeing how hard they worked, and that mindset, that attitude of can do, which, dare I say, maybe the next generation don't always have, was massively inspirational to me. And I think forms a bedrock of my drive as an entrepreneur.
What ultimately drives you?
I'm the youngest of 2, but I have 5 children. My eldest is now at university. My 2 oldest children are at university. So, initially it was for my parents. Some of it was just to make them proud. Then it was also to be financially secure so I could retire them early. Then that paradigm shifts a little bit as I have my own family, and 5 children who go to private school with big school fees. There's a financial commitment that you need to do to maintain a certain level. And but I don't just do it for the money. And I think that's maybe where you're going is, I do it for the ride, and I enjoy it. I'm very passionate about everything I do, and I think the moment I stop enjoying it, and I don't think I could continue to do it. But I'm not what some may think, and maybe my CV doesn't show that, but I'm not a workaholic or someone who has to feel like I work. I do have an objective goal to be able to slow down, much earlier than retirement age, and maybe just slip into more advisory work, consultancy. And this is probably my last gig of being kind of front and center as CEO, but never say never, as they say.